Did it start? Usually it says like, oh, the session's starting to be recorded.
It did,
Okay, great.
Mike. It started.
Oh, it did. Okay, great. So welcome to the book club. And I have a couple of slides to share. I think I'm going to go back and forth with the slideshow because I like to see everybody's face. So we might go in and out of the slides just so we can have a guide for us, but then still have that kind of face-to-face. So welcome to the book club. This is The Expert Effect, and this is our third book club. I'm really excited. This has gone beyond kind of our initial idea of getting together around ideas and having a text as an anchor and continued to kind of take a deep dive into books. So thank you for being here. I will help guide you today, and Lou and Vidya are here in spirit, and they will, I'm sure, join next time. And I've seen that you have already renamed yourselves. Some of us have from previous experiences with our book club, but we will take on book club roles, and these roles have evolved over time. And so if you could please self-identify one of these learner attributes and take on the role of this particular attribute for our discussion of the book club. And then when you do find one that you identify with, can you please rename yourself in Zoom and put the attribute before your name. Okay. Are we all good? All right. Our book clubs have a cycle to them. We'll pose a question. We'll have a warm-up activity. We'll discuss some new information. We'll play with these ideas. And then we'll do a little bit of reflecting at the end. And so the question that we'd like to pose is, what projects do you remember from your own experiences as a student, and what made them so memorable? So thinking back to when you were in school, what projects do you remember, and what makes those experiences so memorable? I'll open it up to somebody who has something at the tip of their brain.
Is it okay if it's a project which is not from school, but from my school life? I mean, when I was in school. Yeah.
Of course, right? I mean, this is the whole idea of constructivist questioning, right? You can take this question wherever you'd like it to go.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it makes me happy right now sharing this. So I think I was in grade 6, and every summer, I started it in grade 6, and I think I did it for 3 years. We would open a library in our garden, like my house, we had a small garden, and I remember the name, we called it Silver Library. And I would collect books from, I mean, my parents, I don't know, I mean, they provided us with a lot of books, which is a little strange because in India, not everybody read so much that time. But yeah, we had a lot of books and access to a lot of books. And somehow I think that's what I wanted. I wanted people to read. And we also collect some money. So people were supposed to pay to issue a book. And if they don't return, then there was an access fees, which was very low. I mean, I remember it was, I mean, people in India, they will relate to me. It was 50 paisa or 1 rupee. I mean, it was nothing. However, I think I did that project every year, and at least for 3 years. I remember very clearly for 3 years. And from there, I did bigger projects like celebrating festivals. So we would do a Diwali night where we would collect money from everyone. So there would be food, there would be a speech, a famous person coming in to give a speech. We would dance. And if I think back, I mean, I know me and my brother, we were very happy to conduct all this. And every time we had different people partnering with us because we kept moving houses. And I think what made it memorable was somewhere I was not a very, I mean, even 10 years back, I was not a very confident person in my school, but these projects made me feel confident and that I can do something, like I'm capable. I guess that's why I ran them and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Yeah.
I can easily tell you my favorite project was grade 3, the cow's eyeball. It was the best project ever. And I remember my older brother doing it. And I remember sitting there going, when is this cow's eyeball coming out? And it was just so awesome to touch it and feel it. Yes, we do not do that anymore. But the luxury of being in an international school where laws are very laxed in terms of what you can and can get, that was the best project. And even now, 40, 50 years later, kids are still talking about that project when we all get together. So that was my favorite, the cow's eyeball, grade 3.
For mine, it was a history project. We had to take a figure from Connecticut history, and I had chosen Nathan Hale, and who was a Revolutionary War spy and figure. So I remember having to make the white wig by taking, yarn and everything and making a tri-corner hat and learning all about his life so that I could get up in front of my classmates and talk about, as if I were Nathan Hale, which I had a lot of nerves about because I didn't like to get up and speak in front of the class, but Nathan Hale was one of the cooler figures of Connecticut history, so I had a good person to go with. But I remember all about that. I could still tell you lots of facts about Nathan Hale today.
I had a similar project when I was in 5th grade. We had to do a speech, but dressed as the person. So I wanted to be MLK. So I'm dressed in all his like his he like I had a suit on. I had a suit on. I wore like the similar like style as him. I had oversized. It was hilarious, but I felt like I was like it was my first speech in front of other people, and I had rehearsed it so many times at home, at dinner, before bed. I remember being like so invested in it, and my speech was basically one that was like his, but in my own words. And I remember it to this day. I almost remember the exact way it started and way it ended. It was just memorable because I was so proud of myself, and it was my first time where I actually like was able to be heard by everyone in the room and not just hand in a paper and have it be read by a teacher and then give it back. Everyone got to clap for me, and it was like a really important day for me, and I still remember it like it was yesterday.
Well, I think mine may be a little bit unconventional. And I don't know if you can even call it a project, but in band, it was our marching band unit, and we had marching band during the day, and we performed our marching band halftime show at the football games, but we rehearsed it during the day in school. And so one thing that really stuck out to me was like there were, I don't know, 90 some kids in the marching band, and I was one kid out of 90. But if I didn't contribute my part, the whole wouldn't work, right? Everybody had their contributing part that made the whole happen. And it was such a like accountability factor for me, right? Like I wasn't performing for my band director. I wasn't performing for my family. I was performing for like my team, my 90 people who were trying to make this one big thing happen. And it was hard, right? It's like hard stuff to memorize everything and know your notes and where to be and how to march and who's playing and when, I was playing the snare drum. So we were like stick heights and who's playing the same hands. And I mean, it was pretty intense. But it was like my favorite thing I've ever done in school. And I think that, part of it had to do with the performance being in front of a stand of like cheering people, because it was at the football game. And also because I was proud of what we were doing, and a part of this kind of big thing. It was like something that was bigger than me. I was a part of something that was bigger than I was. I did it for 4 years. And it was, I think, for me, one of the most memorable experiences from school in general.
I can share one. So one project I always remember in 3rd grade. I'm sharing this given the audience will see what I mean in a second. But in 3rd grade, we got to pick any state in the United States to do a research project on, and I picked the state of Connecticut, which I heard there's like 4 people from, and that's because I had 2 aunts and uncles that lived in Connecticut. So it was really special to me because I had been there, and then like this was also in like the mid 90s, pre-Google. So like I did my research for the project by like making phone calls to my aunts a couple times a week. And it was like, given that they lived far away from me and I didn't get to see them all that often, it was like a really great bonding experience and learning experience. And then when I did my presentation, I was the only kid in the class who picked the state of Connecticut to do. But I felt really proud because like I had that personal connection to it. So that one always stands out to me too.
So one project that I remember is in 1st grade, we were learning about Kenya. And so I remember learning about all the different clothes and food. And one thing that I loved is we actually learned a little bit of Swahili. And so like to this day, I remember a song that we learned in Swahili. So it's really cool how some of these things you remember even from a long time ago, because we kind of did it. It was culminating, we incorporated dance and movement and language and talked about food. And so just like everything kind of came together, and it's something that I still remember to this day.
One of the memories that I have is not actually a project, but I remember the moment where I was in grade 6 and one of our English teachers said that we're going to have a project, but it doesn't have a name. It doesn't have I don't know what I want to do as a teacher. So she said, what do you want to do? How do you want to take action? And I remember that was the first time that I was actually asked by a teacher of what I want to do, or she kind of gave, I remember that she said, what are some of the actions you're taking to change the world? And that was a question that I had never thought of till 6th grade. And right now, looking back, I remember how come, but I do remember that moment, I guess, very vividly, because it was the first time that I was given a choice of what I wanted to do. So I remember that I just had a book drive. That was something that I noticed in the neighborhood that we were living, that we had some kids who had no access to book. And that kind of like took me some time to go and notice that. And because it wasn't coming from the teacher, I guess that's why it was very impactful for me. And I was very proud because I actually did feel that I did something. I made a difference. It was something visible. And that's why it always makes me think about that. How much choice am I giving the kids? Am I starting the projects, or am I giving them any chance to start their own projects?
Yeah, I would like to go next. Mine is like very unconventional because I was unschooled kid for a long time, and my education was in bits and pieces. And it was like I grew up in a very small village in India. And one night suddenly, we are 3 sisters and 1 brother. and such a big house and ancestors' home basically. And it was my projects were never delivered out of school because our schools were very like, we grew up in rough. So one night suddenly my father fell ill, like he had a stiff back. So his spine was not supporting him to stand up or anything. Someone had to carry him, to reach hospital and all. And it was a very small village and we never had any medical facilities there. And just to reach out to hospital, it was almost like 40 to 50 kilometers. So all of a sudden we had to, I'm sorry, it's really hard. So we had to reach out someone, no phones, nothing. So we had to reach out to someone to help us out to take him to hospital. But the positive side of was he could reach to hospital, and my mother was there with him to support him and look after him there. But doctor said, like, has to be in hospital minimum 20 days to 30 days because he had to be operated on his back. So we, 4 of us, had to stay home for those 20 days. He was a partially farmer and government employee as well. So we had to stay home, look after such a big house. It was like, I was like 11, 12 years old, and look after our home, everything. Like, we had cattle, we had farms to look after, and everything we had to manage for 20 days. That was like learning life skills, lifetime like that. Many events happened after that also. And I feel like teaching these life skills, I mean, we can't teach, we just have to give them the opportunity to do these things in life for the children. That gives me confidence to move around the world, raise my children, and to take up the jobs like this in this today's cosmopolitan life. So I feel like these are the important things we generally miss out in conventional schools. And why I take up this expert very seriously is like, children need to start. Yes, we do practice a skill many times, whatever skill we like. Yes, we also can become expert. That is what the feeling I want to just inculcate in children, the group of children I teach. That's what drives me. Like, we do a new thing every day. So thanks for giving me this opportunity and giving me the opportunity to share this, after a long time.
Well, what a great story. I think that, having that idea of connecting what you're doing when you talk about a more conventional school to things that are connected to our lives, and making sure that the ways that we're designing learning opportunities have connections to what's meaningful for kids. And I think that was a really beautiful way of painting that story for us. Zach and Grayson, I'm curious. I mean, you've heard some of these stories of ours. What can you tease out of the things that we just shared with you that connect to some of the ideas that you're sharing through the expert effect? And how do you make connections to what we've just shared and the writings that you did?
So I was just thinking about this, but Grace and I asked this question a lot in presentations, and we don't even frame it as what projects do you remember. Usually we say, like, what do you remember from school? And like 90% of the people start talking about a project that they did one time and things that they created. So in all of these, it was like, no one said like, oh, I really remember that time we had to sit there and memorize notes and then take like the multiple choice test. And I'm not saying there's no room for some of that in school. We still give math tests. We still have to do that. But the things that are memorable, which in my mind are the things that like are transferable, are the things that students are doing. And when we look back at our own school career, and the things that are jumping out are, all those things that we did, we created, something that had an impact, something that taught us something that we're, still kind of use today. Those are the kind of opportunities we want to make more, more ingrained in our school year, and not just like the one-time thing that we do at the very end of a year. So that's kind of what I was thinking about as everyone was sharing.
Yeah, and I was actually taking notes as people were sharing, and I was kind of trying to think about like what was it about that must have made it memorable. And like hearing about, you know, the cow's eyeball, like that's a hands-on experience where you're actually doing it. It's not just a picture on a worksheet. The library that you built in your backyard, like you got to feel pride and ownership. And you said it was a confidence building experience. The history project, you know, and the MLK Junior, like Nathan Hale, like public speaking, getting, you know, having an authentic audience for your learning so that it wasn't just the teacher reading the test that you handed in. You know, Mike, you said being a contributor, and like, you know, it doesn't have to be a 90-person group, but you know, the group projects, like kids are learning transferable skills from those times when they are working with other people. And we want them to, you know, we have to bake those into the experiences. It's where they're able to collaborate and have to communicate and each have a role so that everybody's end product doesn't look the same, but they all brought their own strengths to what they're creating. Rachel shared, you know, the story about incorporating multiple aspects of a subject and exploring, you know, being curious about the other learning that could be there around the subject, you know, including music and including art and including food, and like those that makes it learning memorable. And you know, Zach shared like learning, you know, having a personal connection to it, so giving kids choice over, you know, what aspect about this do you know, can you have ownership over, and then learning from experts, you know, that he had a personal connection with. You know, Berna talked about freedom of choice and like seeing themselves as agents of change. Zach and I always love to tell kids, like, you don't have to wait to be an adult until, you know, to change the world. Kids change the world all the time. And so like, we're looking for those opportunities. And then Rajni sharing about, you know, learning actual life skills, like, you know, finding a way to connect what they're doing in school to what they want to be when they grow up, and giving them opportunities to actually, develop skills. So just amazing stories, so inspirational. So thank you all for sharing. There's a lot there.
You know, one thing that that struck me, you know, when Zach was mentioning that, you know, these don't necessarily have to be these like huge monumental projects, right? And that was in the book as well. Like, these projects don't necessarily have to be, you know, the fifth grade exhibition, the big culminating project at the end of the year, right? There are these small moments where you still have to, you know, think about phonics, and you have to think about, you know, being a mathematician. You have to think about, you know, all the other things that happen. But I went to the Isaacs annual conference, and Dan Heath was one of the keynote speakers, and he was mentioning creating memorable moments, creating those memorable moment peaks in the school year, right? And kids aren't going to remember what you teach them. They're going to remember how they felt while they were in your classroom, right? So you're striving for creating those memorable peaks. And I think through this kind of like authentic project work approach is the memorable peak that they're going to remember, right? They can't remember every day they spent in your classroom. They're going to remember those memorable peaks. Now, I think our responsibility is to think about where those peaks are in the year that you have them in your classroom, right? If you have one peak in your, you know, your whole classroom throughout the year, then, you know, are we able to create the idea of multiple peaks throughout the year, right? And there will be valleys, there have to be valleys, but we're not so concerned and concentrated on those valleys. We're looking for getting to those peaks. And that's kind of what that reminded me of when we were talking about that.
Can you share the name of that person again?
Yeah, his name is Dan Heath.
Okay.
And he wrote a book called The Power of Moments. Yeah. And that came from the idea of, you know, creating those memorable memorable moments throughout the year. That's not what you want to see. Gosh, you see all my stuff. You see all the 3D designs that my kindergartners are making. And my calendar. Here we
I
go.
just see a black screen. Oh, there. Now
You
it's
see now? Okay, great. Okay, so there are some misconceptions of project work, and thinking about, you know, what we have here, 2 truths and a lie, right? So not all projects will be perfect. Project-based learning takes time, and project-based learning is easy. You know, I don't want to, you know, embarrass anyone. I think the number 3 is a lie. Project-based learning is easy. And you know, we can open this up for discussion too, but what I'm thinking is, project-based learning becomes easier over time. Project-based learning becomes easier when you don't think that you necessarily have to be the expert in the room, right? Like Berna's story where she shared when her teacher asked, like, what might you want to do and how might you want to do it? There's no right answer to that. There's only Berna's answer to that. And that becomes easier over time, right? Thoughts on that?
I think one of the aspects that gets easier about it is when you do go through, like, teach this, if you're elementary like me, when you teach the same grade level over a couple times and you kind of get an idea of the scope and sequence of the curriculum. But I remember, like, one point in my career, I moved from 4th grade to 3rd grade. And that first year in 3rd grade, like, it was really hard because I couldn't, like, see more than like a couple days ahead of me. I didn't really know where we were heading in the curriculum at all times. It was like day by day. But now that I've done 4th grade for a few years, you know, we always have curriculum changes here and there, but like my overall scope and sequence of the year is pretty well defined in my head, where I know where those, like you just said, Mike, I love that, the peaks and valleys. I know where we can ramp up those peaks. And I also know where those times are where we have to, like, you know, cover the rest of the stuff. But once you have that scope and sequence, it does get a lot easier.
And I think that also connects with the idea of project-based learning takes time. You know, and it also goes back to, like, the cultural force of time. And you think about what you value in your class, and if you allocate time to the things you value, then project-based learning is part of your school day. If you say you value project-based learning, but you don't allocate time to it, then, you know, that tells a different story, right? So I guess you really do have to know where those peaks and valleys are to consider, you know, where that project work maybe could ramp up. But on the other hand, how do you do that and balance the idea of learner agency? And what if a project starts to bubble up? What if the provocations start to happen right when you're about to, you're dipping down into one of those valleys where you know you have the assessment coming up, or you know you have a break coming up, and you want to make sure that you culminate whatever it is before you leave for break, because when you come back, all that stuff's going to be gone, right? So just thinking about how we can best navigate that together.
And just bouncing off what you said, Mike, also thinking about the pace of the students, not just rushing things through in your own timeline, but also giving that time for, like, as each kid have a different pace, absorbing the information or taking time to take action, and also giving them that chance to organize their own time. Maybe not always doing the same, or not always having having those set times for doing things, or having deadlines, but also giving them that flexibility. And as a teacher, giving yourself that flexibility to help them, or to not only guide them, but to learn with them. Also, just takes time to get used to being that flexible, I guess.
Yeah, it reminds me of an article I wrote, not an article, I'm sorry, a blog post I wrote, I don't know, 10 years ago. That was, you need to be prepared to be flexible. You have to be prepared enough to have that flexibility to know that whatever happens during that ambiguous time, you're able to bring it to where it needs to be. So it is that kind of that dissonance that needs to, that works together. Yes, Denise?
Yeah, I just want to add too, like there is something to be said about being in a particular grade level for several years and, you know, getting your legs under you and everything. But I also have to say, like, the ladies from Middletown joining tonight are newer in their careers. And there's an interesting responsiveness that I feel like our newer teachers have who are teaching a grade level for a first time or new to the grade level, because I think sometimes you have your own favorite things or your own interests as a teacher that sometimes can set the tone in the room. And I love how some of our newer teachers are very in tune with, hey, these kids are just not into this right now. Like, I have to do something to make this more engaging, or they're really kind of going this way with it, where they're not necessarily like as committed to holding on to things that they've created in the past. So I do love when you're able to have that dialogue between veteran and newer teachers and kind of like air the curriculum out a little bit and make it more responsive to each group of students.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think having fresh eyes on something really goes a long way. Friends, I feel like we're 50 minutes into our book club and we're on our warm-up activity. So I apologize for not keeping up that sequence the best I can. So let's think about the new information as we plan for inquiry. Is we talk about the use of technology in the portion of the book that we are discussing, part 3, where students become the experts, and thinking about how the implementation of technology can aid in the redefinition of ways where learners are connecting with one another. They're creating their artifacts. They're connecting with experts. So I wonder, you know, what can we glean from a model like SAMR? I know there are many models like this. So I wonder if we can kind of talk about what and how we have redefined some of the ways in which we engage learners in becoming experts, in sharing what and how they are creating artifacts of their learning, or welcoming experts into the classroom. I think, you know, beyond Zoom at this point, right? I mean, Zoom has become kind of this, you know, old hat in the classroom, you know, per se. So I just wonder if we can think about how we are now redefining some of those things. I'm happy to kick it off, you know, as we're thinking about some things. So I'm working with a kindergarten teacher now. We are in the middle of a car project. Please know that, you know, we are 15 minutes outside of the city of Detroit. Detroit is the motor city, where we love and think about cars all the time. And so our kindergartners were really interested in Matchbox cars right at the beginning of the year, and not, you know, vrooming them up and down ramps. I mean, they were like really into the color, the design, the ways that the fins were, you know, the spoilers and the mirrors, and they were really looking at the engineering of the outside of the cars. And so we've used many different types of technologies for them to create cars that they would not have been able to, right? So thinking about like We have created 3D renderings of cars where then they've printed their cars. But on top of that, they've taken those 3D models and used the augmented reality portion of the 3D modeling software to look at the ratio of the size of the car. So they would take their iPads and point them out the window of the classroom. It shines into the parking lot of our school, and they would augment their 3D model next to a car, and they would see whether they needed to change the ratio of their 3D model. So they actually created a model that was as big as a car. And so, those are things that you would not be able to do otherwise, right? So I would put that at, kind of the redefinition of what and how kindergartners can use technology to create an artifact that shows their kind of expert understanding of, creating these 3D models. That was one thing that came to mind. I wanted to kind of, launch that out there and see how we can toss that around a bit.
Well, I could jump in with maybe a problem of practice that we've run into. Sometimes the technology can take so much of the focus away from the content. And so we've had some conversations in our building. We're fortunate in our district that we have some central office support staff who will come in and teach the tech to teachers and to students. We have someone coming in to teach the students how to use iMovie and things like that. And some of the conversations we're having is, instead of just all starting with sort of everyone like in isolation in a silo trying to match the tech with the project and everything, could we create some sort of scope and sequence where certain pieces are introduced at certain levels, so that by the time the kids come to, say, second grade, they're familiar with these 6 different applications, and then build upon that. So we're just having some conversations around that. That's not a specific example, but some how to navigate some roadblocks we've come across.
Denise, if I can noodle on that for a minute with my kindergarten class, like 3D modeling wouldn't be something I would put in a first grade or in a kindergarten's scope. And I think it was the need for that type of technology, right? So, thinking about technology as a tool, not the learning outcome, right? They wanted to create these cars, and that was the tool that made that learning happen, right? And I feel that, you have a really valid, concept to overcome that. By the time the kids are in kindergarten, they should be able to, log into an app, and they should be able to, create a Google Doc or whatever it might be. By second grade, they should be able to, then you have your other, list of tech skills. And I wonder, how might we continue to advance the idea that the learning comes first, and because of the learning, then the app or the technology or whatever it might be supports that.
Can I add something to I think just having that, I totally this is something that we also go through and have these conversations within our grade level, especially with the ICT teachers, how they can help us to integrate all these big, not only ICT teachers, but having that extra time in their class to learn the app, so that we actually just use it as a means of expression, is that the more they see this as not as an extra, the more they see technology as not an extra thing to do, but like a means of, that is something already being done in many classes, or just like using an app is not an extra way of showing it, but it's also a naturalized way of expressing themselves, is kind of what we have been going through, just not like using technology in very limited times. But no, I'm not saying that we should be using technology all the time, but coming from the teacher using it already, not making it a big deal out of it, but actually seeing it as a part of the learning journey, as a part of, I don't know how to put it in words, but as a part of your journey, I do feel like it helps. And giving them those choices and asking the kids also what they're using, and actually bringing that, what they're, the element of their expertise in technology into the class, and creating that dialogue already. So not having the tech as a luxury, but having it as your norm in your own, because one thing that we keep having from the kids is that I don't use, like, just a very simple anecdote. I use my iPad only for playing games. Whereas when they start the school, they kind of see that iPad as, okay, this is a learning tool. It's not only just for Google Translate, in my case, like when they're learning as a second language, or it's not just for a dictionary, but actually you can use Minecraft Education in creating your own designs, or when you're doing a project, that can be a part where they actually show, or not only just by creating a poster, because again, with the summer, I was just like, that substitution is important. I think sometimes just making them create a poster on Canva is taking too much time, where they can actually create it on the paper, but giving them that choice, where some kids are more, some kids are better, so they choose Canva, the others choose poster or paper or hands-on activities. So having that flexibility in class, I guess, is something that we're also talking about, but just like getting that, not only putting that burden on the ICT teachers, but also using it as teachers.
Well, you know, one thing that I learned from being in Grayson's class is that when you had talked about using Minecraft EDU, and kids, the language that they use is, I want to play Minecraft, because that's what they do. They play Minecraft, right? Grayson calls it, we're going to simulate in Minecraft. We're using Minecraft as a simulation, right? And so just the language around that, I think, helps kind of frame how we're using technology, right? I know I'm going off script a little bit, but I do want to show you, I use this often when we talk about the implementation of technology, right? This is from George Kuros, and I teach a class in technology for teacher leadership. We talk about what are we actually doing with the technology, right? What are the children doing? And so, like you had said, we're using technology as a means, not the end, right? And so when you're asking, like, what do you want kids to do with technology? Some of us are living on the left side of things, right? We're using them to make a presentation. We're going to write a blog post. We're going to create a word cloud. We're going to make a poster, whatever it might be. And I think what, Zach and Grayson are proposing is that we live on the right side of things, right? We want our learners to raise awareness about something. And in order to do that, you might create a Canva, or you might draw a poster by hand, right? So we're not actually thinking about the technology that we're using, but we're thinking about how are we going to bring people together around an idea? How do you start conversations with people who you can't sit around the table with? How are you finding the answers to questions that you're proposing, right? How do you persuade people? How do you change somebody's mind? And what tool might be the right tool for that job, right? And so, thinking about, Denise's proposal of using technology, let's think about what we want our learners to do. What action do we want them to take? And then think about what technology may or may not be the right tool for it. So I just wanted to bring this visual in, maybe as a conversation starter as well.
I know this book club has read Trevor Mackenzie's The Inquiry. And
Inquiry,
so
yeah,
I
dive
always
into inquiry.
dive into inquiry, and I always think about the pool visual, where there are some teachers who starting inquiry, you're at the left end of the pool, the shallow end, and all of the projects may look the same. You might have the same outcome, and then there are some teachers who are more comfortable diving into the deep end, where one student's writing a script for a play, and another student's using iMovie and green screens to recreate a scene from a book, and they look different. So I think the more you get into it, the more you'll find that technology is just a tool, and that not every project will look the same, and that's okay. If all the projects do look the same, it's probably not project-based learning. It's probably just like projects for project's sakes. Something that's going to go into the grade book. But Trevor Mackenzie says, there's no right or wrong end of the pool. So, wherever you need to start is okay.
What more can we add to this, or we'll start our descent into our reflection?
Just maybe, I'm sorry, I talk too much. Differentiation with the technology is something that keeps, as you just said, Grayson, it's just wherever you are as a teacher, I think it is important to create those differentiated learning experiences using the technology, and actually helping the kids to get out of their comfort zone sometimes, or sometimes let them be there, and just nudge them to just think a bit outside their box, and use maybe one of the means of that technology to create something, or to help them with their learning. So I always see that technology as, whenever we're doing or we're planning, we always have these ideas that we come together with all the teachers, like, as you said, what is the learning goal? What do we want? By the end of the unit, what is the learning moment that we want them to have? And how can we help them to facilitate with different means of technology? With different levels of learnings.
I call that technological courage. When I first came to University Liggett School, the children and the teachers were afraid to push buttons like on their iPads. They're like, I don't want to mess anything up. I don't want to break anything. And so I made a pact with them that if you break it, I'll fix it. And so they started experimenting more often, right? Because if they were to, change a setting where now their microphone didn't work, they knew I would come and look through their privacy settings and turn the microphone back on, right? So they became a little bit more technologically courageous. And I think that kind of has helped in the long run.
I just want to add on something to that. Last school year, I was doing a project, and it was pretty simple. It was like video editing type project, and we have iPads. So I was explaining how to do this in iMovie. That's what I'm familiar with. And a bunch of students in my class had this different video editing app that was way more complex than iMovie. And they're like, well, can we use this other app? And I almost was like, no, I want to use iMovie. That's what we said. And I bit my tongue. I was like, okay, teach me, show me that app. And the app that they had, it was way more complex, but it was able to do the same thing. And I bit my tongue. I let them do it. And I think they, it made them feel like they had some ownership in the process, that they got to use something. They showed me these videos they were making outside of school, and they were like some of the athletic boys, and they were making trick shot videos, and they were editing them all together, and it was really cool stuff. So I let them use it, because it's not about the technology, it's about what outcome were they trying to get to, and they still reached that outcome using a different app, even though it wasn't how I had like thought through it in my brain. But yeah, I think it's a really good point to just kind of, have the end goal in mind, and how they get there can have some variance.
Mm. So I know that there is a companion to the expert effect. It's the expert expedition. If you were a in-person participant at the last CITL inquiry workshop, everybody got a copy of it. It's a wonderful book. All of our lower school has it in their classroom libraries. But I wonder if we could think about how might the expert expedition connect to the expert effect. For those of us who have read it, can contribute. For those of us who have authored it, could contribute.
Yeah, so the expert effect came out in May of 2021, and then the expert expedition is a picture book that came out in May of 2022. So just this year. And our goal in writing the expert expedition, this picture book for kids, was kind of twofold. Number one, we wanted to be able to bring that message of you are worthy of learning from experts. You are capable of producing expert level work, and you are, and we need your voice. We need you to teach us like the expert that you are. We wanted to bring that message directly to students. So we put it into a rhyming picture book format, illustrated by another teacher in our school district who's amazingly talented. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback about it. The other reason that we wanted to create a picture book was to help teachers kind of launch these inquiry projects and kind of open the window and show, what might be possible if we, step outside our comfort zone, because we know that's where the magic happens. So it was meant for, to give kids that confidence in that message, and then also to help teachers, kind of introduce the idea of project-based learning. So that's a little bit of context of what Mike's talking about.
I feel that it has a lot of the same message of agency and creativity, and like the launch of something as similar to the dot, right? The dot has this idea of like starting with something and then making it bigger. I feel like the expert expedition has this idea of like empowerment of children, right? You have great ideas. You can become experts in things. And then how are you going, the end of the book is like, then how are you going to share these brilliant ideas with other people? Like, how are you going to be the expert in the things that you know well? And how are you going to share that message? It's a really empowering read.
Yeah, that's the piece that really drew me to that book. So I purchased a copy for each of the 5th grade teachers so they could use it as a read aloud as they're launching exhibition. I want to get more for the rest of our school, and Sunita's already messaging like, can we get a copy of that? So yeah, and it's beautifully illustrated. Like the illustrations are just gorgeous and provoke a lot of wonder, and it's a really nice read.
I have a few copies in my office, and I'm happy to bring them to Middletown in April.
That's
I always have a few extra copies.
Awesome. Sunita, that's got your name on it right there.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we would love to be able to connect with classes too, if anybody's interested, like once you've read it, and we'd love to read it to the class, or like, even be just an audience for kids sharing their stuff too, or making connections. I always offer that. I always offer my students as the audience for your projects, and and then build that relationship where then maybe my students could like share their learning with yours too. But then I just wanted to say thank you to mention Peter Reynolds' book, The Dot, in the same sentence as the Expert Expedition is pretty amazing. So thank you, Mike.
Sure.
And then the other nice thing about the book is that like everything, all of the illustrations and all of the like examples, when we tell kids like you could start your own YouTube channel or you could start a podcast, like those are things that we've actually done with both Zach and I with our classes. So like everything in the book is like based on real life experiences. And so when it came out last spring, the students like recognized themselves in the pages too, which was a really special moment for them to see like, oh, that thing that we did is now something that people around the world from Tokyo and India and Connecticut and Turkey can see. So yeah, it's just special to us.
It's very cool. I know that we have been contributing to a Padlet, and I will put the Padlet link in our chat so that we can think about the connections that we can make throughout the next week between Expert Expedition, the things that we're doing in our classrooms, and the Expert Effect. So as we bring our, oh, I'm sorry, Regini.
Yeah, you please complete. Then I just wanted to ask you, is it possible to add on those book recommendations in our chats?
Absolutely. Yep, I can share those in the chat as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as we wrap up our book club for this week, I just want to thank everybody for being here, as well as to think about our next and final Zoom book club for the Expert Effect. We'll read part 3 and have a similar discussion. And I look forward to seeing all of you there. And any closing words from our special guest today? And thank you, Zach and Grayson, for being here. What would you like to leave us with?
I'll start. I just want to say thank you all so much for doing this and just being here tonight and hearing all of your reflections and how this stuff is actually, making an impact in your classrooms. Has truly like been a highlight of in the whole journey of writing this book. Like hearing how it's making an impact has been really special. So the thing I always like to leave people with, you may have read this part in the book, but as you continue this, a lot of times people, when we give presentations, we've kind of noticed this, people get like very excited and then they try to redo like every unit of their curriculum in like one day. And then they come up with all these questions. We always say like, start small, but then continue to dream big. So start small on one unit, on one project, see the successes and see the challenges. And then when you get to those challenges, what can you learn from that to make the next one bigger and better? So don't feel the need to recreate everything in one day, but start small and then dream big and keep pushing yourself. And it's the wonderful thing about teaching is it's a continuum. So it's never like our work's never done. We're never the final expert. We can always learn and grow. So I encourage you to keep doing that.
Yeah, and beyond just joining tonight, we would love to support your journey too. And so I know Zach and I are pretty active on Twitter. As long as Twitter is surviving, we'll be there, I guess. We also are on Instagram. So if you ever want to tag us, if you're looking for expert connections, if you have a question like, hey, has anybody ever connected with a scientist who talks about this, or things like that, we like to try to help make connections. And so if we could grow an online community to help support each other in those, either looking for experts or looking for audiences for our students learning, we always like to support teachers that way. So you can find us there and continue to share what you're doing. It means a lot.
What final words do we have from the group?
I just want to say thank you guys so much for allowing us to take risks in our classrooms that sometimes the curriculum makes, especially as a new teacher, I get so scared that OMG, I'm not going to get that standardized test and that benchmark. And then I read your book and I'm like, wait, I can do something. I can make a difference. I can do an inquiry in the middle of a unit and it's okay. So thank you for giving us that ability to take the risk.
It's funny because I was going to say something really similar. I was going to say that, you know, we talk about empowering our students, but these are the kind of things that empower us and make us feel empowered to make those choices for our students. And I actually had a conversation with somebody today about that ability and how, you know, our students were showing great interest in natural disasters and just, okay, well, we have to do this informational writing, you know, well, what's the purpose? Like, what do we want them to get out of it? And just kind of thinking about that and having that permission to go off of what they're interested in, what they want to do, and having it more student led. It's really empowering.
You know, I think about Ron Richart's quote, if you want classrooms to be cultures of thinking for learners, schools must be cultures of thinking for teachers. Can you imagine if like this was our staff meeting? Right? And we gather as a group of thinkers around the idea of, you know, empowering learners, project-based learning, and practical planning for the classroom. And we have these moments with us as adult learners and how that may translate into the time where you walk from the staff meeting to your room and begin your day with learners. I'd like to do that.
I feel like every time I leave a presentation or leave like a group like this, I'm like, yeah, what if we took all these people that are here right now and like started our own school? It would be magical.
So I want to say good night to some of us. I want to say good morning to some of us. And I just want to continue to share my gratitude in us connecting and coming together as a group of learners and supporting one another through that risk taking and through that the idea of student engagement. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Grayson and Zach, are you gone? Zach, you're there. Just gonna tell you something before I go.
Yeah, I'm here.
I was going to write to you, but we've started after summer in the summer workshop that we had. I've actually been listening to all of your podcasts with the fourth grade innovators and the fifth grade. I have fourth graders. We've actually embedded your channel into our starting with our own project of podcasting. I'll definitely share it with you, but my students loved them. I mean, they're so into listening to your students' podcasts that I just wanted to share that they did definitely inspire my students.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. We are just got it going again this year, and I cannot wait to tell all the students on Monday that feedback. We go through every once in a while and look at the country, so I did notice that Turkey popped up, so now I know where it came from.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear that.
No,
Awesome.
thank you for inspiring. That's amazing.
I tried to get Grayson to jump back on, but he didn't. But
No,
please relay that
I just
message,
wanted
yeah.
to say, just tell, like we have been definitely using your podcast as our learning content.
Oh, thank
like
you
the
for sharing
kids,
that.
hearing how the other kids around the world are actually talking about growth mindset and talking about the same values that we have in our classes was amazing. How it was really inspirational, and they want to. I have a couple of them. They actually do want to do. So we'll definitely be doing this year, and we'll be sharing with you.
Definitely share it or tag me on or something, and we'll definitely listen. Can't
Sorry
wait.
for keeping you.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again.
Bye bye.
All right.
See ya.
Bye. See you, Mike.
Bye.